and welcome to another episode of Stack of Stats, bringing you all the analytics behind the bets. I am your host, Pamela Maldonado, and I am joined by Anthony Charter of Tour Junkies to break down this week's PGA action for the Wells Fargo Championship. Charter, man, happy to have you. How did Valspar go for you last week?
Not great. Happens. I think only one of my bets cashed, which was Answer. I mean, it basically just a couple of strokes away. Like we're one stroke away from Connors and Casey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just happens. Chris Kirk kind of was disappointing. Had a bad end of the round.
Chris Kirk definitely was disappointing, as was Corey Connors, and I made the mistake of overcommitting too much to one player, and that was, of course, taking Corey Connors to finish in the top 20, finish in the top 10, finish in the top 5, and to win, and of course, he finished T21, so there goes all the bets. So had I done just the top 20s like I normally do, then I would have come out with a profit. Instead, I lost a few dollars, but it happens. It's a lesson learned. And now I'm going to go back to my normal ways and kind of go back to what I was doing before. And of course, I am keeping track of all of our bets, both Charters and mine. So you can find a link to that. Any post that I do to Twitter related to the PGA, then you will find it in that timeline. And make sure to follow at Pamela M35 so you can see a link to that. But let's get into it. The course this week for the PGA, it is the Wells Fargo Championship, being played at Quail Hollow Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is a par 71. It's roughly 7,600 yards. It is considered one of the toughest courses on tour. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yes. Yeah, I think in 2019, I believe it was the fifth toughest course that they played all year, and generally it is. Rarely the winning score gets above -15, which Max Homa did in 2019. Rory did a little better than that in 2015 with his second win here. But yeah, some of the win, James Hahn won at like -9. A couple other ones won lower than that. So
it is a very tough course. Yep, it is long. What makes this course difficult and what it is known for is there's a 3-hole stretch, hole 16, 17, and 18. It is called the Green Mile. It is the closing 3-hole stretch on hole 16. It is a 506-yard par 5 dogleg right. Water hazard comes into play. Hole 17, it is a 223-yard peninsula green with a bunker to the right. And then hole 18 to close it out and make it just all that much more tough. It is a 494-yard par 4 with a downhill tee shot, bunker on the right, water on the left, uphill second shot, and a sloping green. So it definitely adds the difficulty, makes for some entertaining. Good for entertainment, bad if you're a better, hold sweating it out there in the last couple of holes. But looking at those holes, those are just to name a few. This is Bermuda grass. What can you tell us about the greens and the putting situation for the week?
Well, not only do you have to deal with the tough 17, but you also have to stare down Webb Simpson's house.
What?
On 17, which is huge, massive, gigantic mansion.
So Webb lives on the course. That is a need to know information. That means he probably has played here a bunch load of times.
He has played here a bunch of times, but you know what? His tournament history is nothing that really to write home about. I mean, yeah. I know he finished T2 in 2015 behind Rory, but other than that, he hit a T18 in 2019 and a T21 in 2018. So I mean, when you're paying for a price like that, those results really aren't going to cut it.
You should probably be doing a little bit better, which brings me into the field. 2020, of course, was not played because of the pandemic, leaving the last winner to be Max Homa, who won this event in 2019. And he is entering this event with a T6 finish at last week's Valspar Championship. So he's kind of finding his stride at the right time. Also in the field, you have Rory McIlroy, who we haven't seen play since the Masters. But did you know that he holds the 72 hold record for 17 under, which he shot back in 2015. He also holds the 18 hole record, which he shot 10 under in the third round in the same year. And he is also the only 2-time champion at this event, having won in 2015 and 2010. But of course, he hasn't looked good as of late. His numbers, his stats are kind of all over the place. How are you assessing Rory this week?
Yeah, Rory doesn't really have much of the key stats that you want this week. I mean, his numbers just haven't really been good, really, even since he's had the baby. It's been kind of off. I know, he admitted to trying to chase the speed that Bryson was doing, and it really threw him off. Bryson said he kind of left a back door like for coding. Like there was at a point where, if he got to that point, he could back out of the, speed race without harming it. And apparently Rory didn't do that.
Mm.
And so anyway, he's re-enlisted the help of Pete Cowan, who's a golf coach, to try to help him out. That happened a little bit before the Masters. So I don't know if Rory's back or going to be back, but I think I'll probably just be late to that party.
And if you are trying to duplicate Bryson, good luck. There's only one of him, and it's really hard to kind of mimic what he has done. He's turned it into a science. So I can see why Rory, if he did in fact try to do that, why he's perhaps struggling with that. So he has become a fade for both you and I. Definitely, we're not going to be having him on our card, either bet for or against. But it does lead me into the stats. You were talking about his stats. He doesn't have the stats for this course. So then tell me, there are three of the four par threes are over 200 yards. And then there are four par fours of 500 yards or more. So then which stats do you think are going to be most relevant to this course for the week?
Well, when you look at the breakdown for strokes gained totals for like the top 10 on average at this event, approach and putting are like way and above number one. Strokes gained off the tee becomes really huge because of the length. I know there's some rain in the forecast, so that'll probably make the course just play a little bit longer. The driving distance is well above average. I think the driving distance at this course is like 300 compared to like 282 for the tour average.
Mhm.
Driving accuracy, green and regulation percentage, and scrambling are well below tour average. And even the proximity to the hole on approach shots is like 42 feet from here, whereas like the tour average is like 28 feet. So that's something to keep in mind. You mentioned the par fours that are really long. They'll move the tee boxes, front and back to change the lengths of those. But basically, on average, 8 holes they play per day are between 450 and 500-yard par fours. So that's very important. And then obviously par five scoring on a course like this is really huge. You got to take advantage of those.
We always talk about courses where you can leave your driver in the bag. This is definitely not one of those courses. It is long. You need your
Mhm.
driver. So that's why we are weighing off the tee more heavily this week as opposed to just stroke skin on the approach. But that
Yeah.
moves us into your card. And you do have 8 players that you are targeting for this week, a few top 20s, a few top 10s, and a couple of outrights. Looking at first your top 20s, you have 3 players. You have Corey Conners, Brendan Steele, and Tom Lewis. Can you tell me why Corey Conners needs no introduction? We absolutely
Yeah,
have been
no.
on this guy absolutely every week. But what about Brendan Steele and maybe Tom Lewis? Have you looking towards them this week?
I've been kind of on and off Steele for most of 2021. He's had some really good results for me. He played really great at Zurich with Keegan 2 weeks ago. He's 26th on my model. He's 25th in the par fours that I mentioned, the 450 to 500. He's a decent putter, and the ball striking numbers and history at Quail Hall are pretty decent. He's got a T10 and T15 here, so just looking for some more of that, and hope he keeps it up. As for Lewis, I was on him last week. His first 2 rounds were so good. He went into the weekend like T6, and I believe he then shot like 4 over par the next 2 rounds. So obviously drifted quite a bit. But the numbers are pretty decent, and he'll be, I mean, for DFS purposes, he'll be really well owned. But I think I just will stay back on him and get a nice price on a T20.
You're talking about Brendan Steele doing really well at the Zurich, and in fact, he did. He took fourth, but that wasn't his only top 10 finish. He also took third at the Honda Classic just a couple events before. And then Tom
Yeah.
Lewis, he took eighth at the Zurich. That's been his best finish as of late. However, he has gained strokes off the tee and putting, which could make a really good combination for this course. And then looking at your top 10s, you have Victor Hovland, Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Corey Conners, Max Homa, and Abraham Answer. Those are going to be the players that you are targeting for your top 10. Hovland, Finau, Willie Z. These are players, of course, that we don't need to talk about too much. You also have Corey Conners, which you just mentioned. But Max Homa, he's a bit of an interesting one because he just is coming off all of these players that you are targeting did really well at Valspar last week. You have Victor Hovland, who took third at Valspar. You have Tony Finau, who we haven't seen since the Zurich Classic, but he did take 10th at the Masters the week before. Corey Connors, of course, he had took T21. But Max Homa, he's coming off a sixth place finish at Valspar, and so is Abraham Ancer coming off a fifth place finish at Valspar. But that can't be the only reason why you're targeting these players. Can you talk a little bit about them?
That's mostly just how they rated out in my model. Their ball striking. I mean, Homa's obviously the defending champ, and like with it not being played last year, probably relieves a little bit of the pressure. And obviously, he's playing really good. I mean, he could have won last week too, but yeah, I've been on Homa a little bit for the last while, I guess, and he won the Genesis, which is a corollary course here, another tough track. So I mean, I've said this a few times, but on the Tour Junkies podcast, we had asked Colt Knost who like he thought was one of the best players in the world, and he
Mhm.
said that Max Homa could be the best player in the world if Max Homa realizes he could be the best player in the world.
If he realizes you have said that before. So, and here we
Yeah.
are coming into a time where he's kind of finding his stride once again. Took taking 17th at the Zurich, and then he took sixth at Valspar. So he's on his way. And
On
you were
his
talking
way.
about you're talking about some of the analytics that you were talking about in your model. So can you mention some of those key stats that maybe had you geared look towards these players?
Yeah, I mean, ball striking off the tee to green approach. I usually weight that around 50% of my model. Just really depends on, like, I mean, generally off the tee isn't something that I throw in there because ball striking and tee to green have enough stats from there to put in. Um,
Hmm.
but greens and regulation, he's decent. The approach is really good. Opportunities gained, which is a stat from Fantasy National that gives you basically any opportunities, birdies or eagles or better, within 15 feet of the flag. So I usually pair those numbers with birdie or better gained. Homa's number one in birdies or better gained. He's number one in strokes gained in par five. He's number six in the 450 to 500 range, and he's seventh in putting. So when
How
you
about
put
some of the
all of
other
those,
players?
same thing. All of these guys, like Answer's number ninth in my model, Connors is number one in my model, Tringali's number three. Finau isn't that high in the model. He's 16th, but he does score a lot of birdies. The ball striking numbers and approach are really good. And then I ran a model too where I did like courses that are over 7,400 yards, difficult fairways, and difficult um, scoring average. And all of
Mhm.
these guys are way up there on that one as well.
I do want to talk briefly about Tony Finau because there's one thing I kind of agree with all of your players. I like them. I think they're headed in the right direction. But Tony Finau is the only one that I have a little bit of concern about because he has lost strokes off the tee. If we're talking about a player needing a player, targeting players who are good with their driver, good with their tee shots. And Tony Finau is one player that has lost strokes off the tee in three straight events. He took 28th at WGC match play, which of course that is a paired event. He missed the cut at the Valero Texas Open, having lost four strokes off the tee. And then, even though he lost 1.67 strokes off the tee at the Masters, he still ended up taking 10th. So that is a good sign. But is that any bit of concern to you at all?
No, we like the rough isn't very long here, so like you don't really gain strokes off the tee very well if you miss a lot of fairways. That's not really going to be super penal here. I'd rather have someone that can bomb at 330 and just miss the fairway by a few yards than have someone who's only driving like 270 to 280 and just hits the middle
Hmm.
of the fairway every time.
Right.
Um, Valero, for instance, is one of those courses. Like, it's very tight. Most people didn't even use driver a lot of the time.
Hmm.
That type of thing.
Moving over to your outright wins, you have a few players. One of them is going to be, some of them are double dips. You have Max Homa, Abraham Answer, and then the two players that you have not mentioned, but you are taking them as outrights, are Cameron Tringali and then Keegan Bradley. Can you tell me why you have these two players as outrights, but not necessarily as top 10s or top 20s?
when the numbers came out on Monday, I just fired them immediately. I was kind of, usually the outright numbers come out right away, and then I guess the book probably gauges what to do for top 10 and top 20 based on probably how they're hit.
Mhm.
So like I saw Tringali was 51, and I was like, oh, I mean, he's been playing so good. I think 50-1 is one of those numbers you just have to fire right away. So I did.
Right.
And then, for Keegan, I mean, if Tringali is 50-1, I don't think I don't think that Keegan should be like 71. So I had to fire that one right away as well. And then the T20 and T10 numbers came out, and they weren't that great. So I just, I had all the money allocated anyway. That's why my Willie Z bet is only $12 instead of maybe 15 or 20 or something, because you can only get 100 in there.
And it's really hard to do when you have so many plays. But that is why we're doing $100 to kind of keep ourselves in check. And it kind of helps keep a balance of like, all right, I only have this much money. I'm not going to go overblown on anything. So I think it's all about the discipline as well. And it helps because last week I had more plays than normal. And I actually I lost like what, $10, I think, out of that $100 budget. So it wasn't even bad. Had I laid off the double dips, then I would have profited, I think, of probably about $30-$40 out of the 100. So lessons learned. But these are the players that you are looking to target. Just to kind of reiterate, you have Corey in your top 20s. You have Corey Conners, Brendan Steele, Tom Lewis. In your top 10s, you have Victor Hovland, Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Corey Conners, Max Homa, Abraham Ancer. And then to win, you have Max Homa, Abraham Ancer, Cameron Tringali, and Keegan Bradley. Those are your players that you are targeting, which moves me over into my card. And the first one that I have is actually a player we just talked about, and that is Keegan Bradley. I'm going to be more conservative this week, and I'm only going to lay a top 20 option. He is plus 300 to hit it, but I really like what this guy is doing. He is top 25 in the field for strokes gained off the tee and around the green. He is third in strokes gained on the approach. He is fourth in strokes gained tee to green. I added a couple of stats this week that I don't normally use. But knowing that this course is long, I looked at two things, and it was par 4 scoring over 500 yards. There's 4 that are going to fit this mold. And then I also did, I forgot it. Let me look at it. I did par 3 scoring of 225 to 250. There's a few holes of that as well. And he ranks really well in those. And he has been ball striking. His ball striking has been superb as of late. His around the green has been good. And in back-to-back events, he has gained strokes in all categories in the last 2. That was 10th at the Arnold Palmer and then 4th at Sanderson. So I'm really liking what this guy is doing as of late. And top 20 is as far as I'm going to go, but that's what I'm looking to do. And of course, he is on your outright. So I know that you agree with me.
Yeah, he was pretty high in my model. He's 7th, or no, sorry, 11th in my model. The ball striking numbers and approach, top 5, top 10 in greens and regulation. The only worry, and which has pretty much been Keegan's downfall, and the reason why he's not like an elite golfer, is his short game. It is super terrible. Even in strokes gained putting is 125th in the field in 2021, and he's 93rd in scrambling. Those can come and go, and the last few rounds he's kind of neutralized those a little bit. It stopped like the leaking of the dam, basically, where all his strokes go. So yeah, if he has a good short game week, he's live to win a lot of tournaments.
He is, of course, coming off that second place finish at Valspar just last week, and then he took 4th at the Zurich the week before. And then he took 23rd the week before. So he looks like he's improving. There's only one spot left to improve, and that's at the top. So hopefully he can contend and do well for this week. The next players that I have are going to be a little bit more on the chalky side, but I mean, sometimes I think it's okay to go a little bit chalk. And one of those players that I'm going to be looking at is Jon Rahm. His odds, they aren't great because he is the favorite. He is the plus 1,000 favorite, co-favorite with Justin Thomas to win this tournament. And his top 20 is minus 185. His top 10 is only plus 115. But I do think that he has a legitimate shot of winning this event. He is 3rd in strokes gained off the tee. He is 9th in strokes gained on the approach, 3rd in strokes gained tee to green, and 4th in strokes gained total. He is top 50 in both par 3 scoring of 225 to 250 and par 4 scoring of greater than 500 yards. And he took 4th here in 2017. And I looked at, also another thing that I did was I looked at courses. This course is long. It's roughly 7,600 yards. I looked at other courses that are of similar distance, and those courses are the Farmers, the Corrales, the Century, Puerto Rico, Masters, 3M, Sanderson, and Arnold. Well, he has played 3 of those tournaments, and twice, both in 2020 and this year, he has finished in the top 10 6 out of 6 times. So his best finish being second at Farmers last year and then fifth at the Masters this year. So I definitely think that a top 10 is in contention with him. So what I'm going to do with him, top 20 at minus 185, though I really don't mind spending that much. We only have $100. So what I'm going to do is just split it between a top 10 and to win. And you're nodding your head like Jon Rahm is a good option. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, he's third, he's the third best golfer in the world. So it's really hard to have anything terrible to say. I guess it'll just be interesting to see. We haven't, he obviously had his baby, then immediately went to Augusta, and now he's spent however much time with the new baby and hasn't played any competitive golf. Like, I mean, I would assume and hope he's been, practicing and grinding things out. But I guess we'll see what that's going to be like.
But what's that thing you say? Strokes gained life. He has it. He's ready to
right,
come
but
out and
strokes
fire to
gained
win.
home life, same as like Willie Z. It can go either way. I mean, it's maybe he'll miss the baby, and he'll like, oh, I'm just gonna, he'll have a couple bad holes and be like, no, I'm out of here. I gotta go home to my baby.
And you talked about Will Zalatoris, and he is another player that I am targeting, and I am looking for him in the top 20 at plus 120. I definitely, though, do think that he can finish in the top 10 at plus 250, but I already have bet him to win, except I grabbed it at plus 3,000 and the odds are now plus 2,800. But I mean, like I said, with this guy, this is the Willie Z show because he is on the pod every week in some form or fashion for months now. And I think people were just now coming around to him. But if you listened to the pod last at RBC Heritage, what did I say? Fade Willie Z. And why? Because that course was on the shorter end. That doesn't fit his game. He is definitely fit for longer courses, and it reflects, it shows in that. Because if you look at the courses that I mentioned that are on the longer side, he took 8th at Corrales Punta Cana, he took 7th at Farmers, 10th at Arnold Palmer, 2nd at the Masters. He is 4th in strokes gained in the field. He's 4th in the field in strokes gained on the approach. He's top 10 strokes gained tee to green and a total. He hasn't played here on the tour, but that's basically every tournament that he has played this season, and yet he continues to outperform. And you are nodding your head in agreement once again. So, I mean, he's on your card, and now he's on my card. But what else can we say about him?
I mean, he went to Wake Forest, which is nearby.
Beneficial.
So, I mean, I'm sure he's played here before. I mean, maybe not in the setup that they'll see this week, but which is obviously it's been redesigned in 2016 because it hosted the PGA Championship in 2017. So, it was made a little bit tougher, a little bit longer and whatnot. So, I think he's been out of college long before then. So, hard to say, but yeah, I mean, you want ball striking guys this week. That's pretty much his game.
Yep.
If it'll just on the green game and around the green game is going to be very, very hard this week. Will Zalatoris definitely doesn't really have that in his game. So as long as he can keep the shots close, he probably won't struggle. But yeah, like his scrambling would be a little bit worse, and that's really the only thing that probably prevented me from grabbing the outright number. Like I can still get him at 20 plus 2,900. But I mean, obviously I've already extended myself quite a bit with all the other guys. So I figure just the top 10 will be nice. I mean, this is a very, very tough field too. Like a lot of a lot of Willie Z's, well, I mean, except for the US Open, where he was phenomenal. Most of the, the strength of the field that he's played so far haven't really been up there. He's going to face 4 of the top 5, like 11 of the top 15 golfers in the world are here. It's this is going to be a really this is probably his, other than the US Open, this is probably going to be his toughest test yet. I would
Which he finished in the top 10 in.
Yes, top 6.
And you were talking about strokes gained life. No one is living larger than Will Zalatoris. He bought a house. He got engaged. He's taken a couple of weeks off. So maybe he's going to come into this with some extra motivation, knowing that he needs to pay off that ring.
Yeah, well, I mean, he already won like what
all the monies.
$1.8 million at the Masters, so I'm sure he's got the ring covered. Although, like, if if you go by like what is it, the one third of your salary or something,
he's gonna need to make up for it somehow.
That's
But the
gonna be
next
a
player,
heavy rock.
the next player that I have, the only other player that I have left is Xander Schauffele. I'm taking him in the top 20 at -110, though I do think a top 10 at +200 is a viable option. I'm going to be conservative and stick to just a top 20. But Xander Schauffele, I mean, he is a superb player. He has done really well as of late after missing the cut at the Players Championship, which we can't fault him for because a lot of players did. And we talk about that every week. He took 18th at the WGC match play, which of course we can't consider too much, but he took third at the Masters and then he took 11th at the Zurich. But if you look at the courses where you're talking about these long courses, the Farmers, the Crowley Century, he's done really well at those. He took fifth at Century. He took second at Waste Management, which is those are Bermuda greens, and then he took 18th at the match play, and then of course 11th at Zurich. But if you're looking at these long courses, he has won these before. He won the Century in 2019. He took second at the Masters in 2019. He took second at Century again. He has fifth at Century this year. He took second at Farmers and then third at the Masters. He has gained strokes in every single category in 3 straight events at these long tournaments. So that is something that I am looking to do. Those are the players that I want to target, the players who have good long course history, and he fits the mold. And you are nodding your head in agreement. I think you really do like this play. What do you think?
Yeah, the numbers were kind of lame for me, and I already had it there. Plus, like,
betting wise,
yeah, but I mean, from the get-go, Xander was on my radar. I think he's going to be my highest owned DFS play. I'll probably have him in every lineup. He just has that. He hasn't really, like, he's not like an elite ball striker or an elite putter, but he's like the best of both of those. And then what he really does as elite is like par 5 scoring, opportunities gained. He puts a lot. Putting is not like his strongest suit, but he's still 24th in 2021. But like his opportunities, he puts lots of balls close. He finishes a lot of the birdies, and then he's second in the field in par 5 scoring and third in the field in par 4s that are 450 to 500 yards. So yeah,
I love that.
I didn't really like the numbers that I got on Xander, but immediately I knew I wasn't going to be too worried about it because he'll probably be in every one of my DFS lineups. So if you get some good numbers on Xander and play DFS or whatever, fire away for sure.
All on everything. He is also 10th in strokes gained to the green and second in strokes gained total for 2021, behind only Bryson DeChambeau. So those are the players that I am targeting. Just to reiterate my card, I am going to end up taking Keegan Bradley as a top 20 at +300. I'm going to take Jon Rahm at top 10 +115. Sprinkle, I'm just going to leave it at that, actually. I'm going to take Xander Schauffele, top 20 -110. I'm going to take Will Zalatoris, top 20 +120, and I've already bet him at +3,000 to win. But for this podcast purposes, his odds are +2,800. Those are going to be the players that I target. It's a little bit more chalk. I think it's really focused and keyed in this week around. But that does it. You like it? You ready?
Can't do any worse than last week.
Absolutely. The only way to go is up. But do make sure to follow Anthony Charter at Ant Charter on Twitter, and you can follow me at Pamela M35. And that does it for another episode of Stack of Stats.
Good luck.